Welcome, everyone. Today we are exploring the absolute cornerstone of Microsoft 365 security, conditional access policies. In the modern era of hybrid work, the old perimeter firewall is dead. Identity is your new perimeter. We will learn how to configure a dynamic, zero-trust security model that protects your data without crippling your users' productivity. Let's get started. To understand Microsoft 365 security, you must first understand the zero-trust security model. Unlike traditional perimeter models that assume internal networks are trustworthy, zero trust dictates that no user or device is trusted by default. Conditional access is the engine that makes this possible. It is a dynamic access control system built directly into Microsoft Entra ID. Before a user is ever granted access to SharePoint or Exchange, conditional access intercepts the request. It acts as the ultimate bouncer at the door, enforcing the core zero trust principle of verify explicitly. Instead of just checking if a password is correct, it evaluates the entire context of the sign-in in real time. This ensures that our security posture is adaptive and resilient, perfectly suited for remote and hybrid work environments where employees access data from anywhere. Look at this high-level architectural flow. On the left, we have the user and their device initiating an access request. This request doesn't go straight to the applications. Instead, it hits the conditional access engine in the center. This engine represents our zero-trust architecture. It pauses the transaction, verifies explicitly based on our configured policies, and only then does the arrow flow through to the Microsoft 365 services on the right. If the verification fails, the bridge is essentially pulled up and access is denied. A decision engine is only as good as the data it receives. In conditional access, we call this data signals. When a user signs in, Microsoft Entra ID instantaneously gathers a wealth of contextual telemetry. Who is the user? Are they in the finance group or marketing? Where are they located? Are they coming from a known corporate IP address or an unfamiliar foreign country? What device are they using? Is it a corporate laptop or a personal tablet? Finally, what application are they trying to access? We can apply much stricter controls for highly sensitive financial apps compared to a basic time tracking portal. For our deep dive, the most advanced signal is risk. By integrating with Microsoft Entra ID protection, we feed machine learning-driven threat intelligence directly into our policies, detecting anomalies like impossible travel or leaked credentials in milliseconds. This diagram breaks down the specific signals funneling into our decision engine. You can see user identity, device state, location, and sign-in risk all converging simultaneously on the conditional access engine. Think of these as variables in a massive, instantaneous equation. The engine compiles all these disparate data points to form a complete contextual profile of the sign-in attempt. This rich profile is then passed to the decision evaluation phase, ensuring we aren't just relying on a simple password check. Now we move into the actual brain of the operation, the conditions and logic. Conditional access policies are essentially massive if/then statements. As an administrator, you configure the if. For example, if a user is in the executive group, and if they're accessing Exchange online, and if they're outside the corporate network. Why do we use this logical structure? Because it allows us to apply the principle of least privilege dynamically. We can build security that adapts. If a user is sitting at their desk in a trusted location on a trusted device, we don't want to bombard them with security prompts. We want them to be productive. The deep dive here is critical for administrators. Always use report-only mode when building new logic. This allows you to simulate the policy's impact across your tenant using real audit logs, ensuring you don't accidentally disrupt business operations before you officially turn the policy on. Here we visualize the logical processing loop. The signal intake arrives at our primary decision gate. Are the defined conditions met? If the context does not match the policy parameters, we follow the no path and the system moves on to evaluate the next policy. However, if the signals match the exact scenario you define, say, an external login attempt, we follow the yes path. This immediately triggers the access controls you configured, passing the baton to the enforcement phase to protect the Microsoft 365 environment. Once the signals are evaluated and the conditions are met, the policy must take action. These are your access controls. The basics are straightforward. You can outright block access, you can cleanly grant access, or, most commonly, you can grant access, but require something else first, typically multi-factor authentication, or MFA. Why is this proportional response so valuable? Because blocking every slightly unusual login stops work completely, while letting them all through invites a data breach. Demanding MFA is the perfect middle ground. It challenges the user to prove they are who they say they are. For our deep dive, understand that controls go beyond just MFA. You can configure policies that force a user to read and digitally sign a corporate terms of use policy before they can open SharePoint. If the risk is extreme, you can even use a policy to force an immediate, secure password reset right there at the login screen. This diagram lays out your arsenal of enforcement actions. Once the policy is triggered, you can route the user down several paths. The most severe is a hard block access. In the middle, we have our interactive controls, require MFA, require password reset, or require terms of use. Notice how the require MFA path flows into identity verified, which ultimately leads to grant access. This proves that conditional access isn't just about stopping users, it is about providing secure, verified pathways for them to safely reach their data. One of the most powerful signals we can evaluate is device state. We don't just care about the user's identity, we care about the machine they are typing on. Through integration with Microsoft Intune, conditional access can demand that a device is marked as compliant or is hybrid Azure AD joined before granting access. Why is this critical? Because if a user has a valid password and passes MFA, but their laptop is infected with malware and lacks encryption, your data is still at risk. How it works is beautiful. Intune checks the laptop for BitLocker encryption and active antivirus. If it passes, Intune tells Entra ID it is compliant, and conditional access lets the user in. The deep dive here addresses personal devices. If an employee uses a personal iPad, you can't force full device management. Instead, you use app protection policies. Conditional access can force the user to use secure M365 mobile apps where corporate data is isolated, preventing them from copying corporate text into their personal notes. Let's track the life cycle of a device compliance check. The user device on the left attempts to connect. It is immediately evaluated by Microsoft Intune, which performs health checks for things like active antivirus and BitLocker encryption. This results in a compliant status decision. If the device fails the health check, the no path is taken, and conditional access outright blocks access until the user updates their system. If the device passes, the yes path is taken, and conditional access allows entry, guaranteeing that only secure endpoints touch your corporate network. For organizations seeking elite security, we must talk about risk-based policies. This involves integrating conditional access with Microsoft Entra ID protection. What this does is shift us from static rules to dynamic, AI-driven defense. We evaluate two types of risk. Sign-in risk looks at the current login attempt. Is this user logging in from a country they've never visited? User risk looks at the identity globally. Did Microsoft's threat intelligence find this user's password for sale on the dark web? Why is this necessary? Because static IP block lists can't stop credential stuffing attacks. You configure this by tying your conditional access policy to a risk threshold. For our deep dive, imagine a user whose credentials are leaked. Entra ID protection flags their user risk as high. Your conditional access policy immediately kicks in, intercepts their next login, and forces them to perform a secure password reset utilizing MFA. You have automatically remediated a critical threat with zero IT help desk intervention. This flow shows the speed of risk-based authentication. A sign-in attempt occurs and is instantly analyzed by Entra ID Protection's machine learning. The system detects an anomaly, like impossible travel, and assigns a high sign-in risk score. This score is passed directly into the conditional access policy. Because we configured a rule stating high risk equals MFA, the system immediately challenges the user with an MFA prompt. If the attacker has the password but not the phone, the threat is mitigated instantly. What happens after a user successfully logs in? That brings us to session controls. Unlike standard policies that just act as a door, session controls monitor the user's activity throughout their entire active session. The basics involve restricting specific actions, like preventing a user from downloading files to their local hard drive or stopping them from printing. Why do we need this? It is the ultimate solution for unmanaged devices. If a contractor needs to view a confidential SharePoint document from their personal computer, you can let them see it, but physically prevent them from saving a copy. How is this magic achieved? Conditional access hands the session over to Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. Diving deeper, this uses a reverse proxy architecture. Defender for cloud apps sits between the user and Microsoft 365, inspecting every packet. It can block clipboard copy and paste actions in Teams, or forcefully apply a visual watermark across a Word document in the browser, enforcing data governance in real time. Let's trace this reverse proxy sequence. The user on a personal PC sends an authenticate request to conditional access. CA recognizes the unmanaged device and, instead of sending the user directly to SharePoint, routes the session to Defender for Cloud Apps. Defender then proxies the connection to SharePoint. When SharePoint returns the document data, Defender intercepts it, applies the session control rules, and finally displays a read-only view to the user where the download buttons are functionally disabled. The data never permanently touches the unmanaged endpoint. Let's synthesize everything into a real-world scenario that perfectly demonstrates the power of conditional access, securing the hybrid worker. Imagine a finance executive traveling for a conference. They sit down at a coffee shop and need to quickly check a highly confidential quarterly report in SharePoint. Step 1. They attempt to log in. Conditional access immediately evaluates their context. It sees the highly privileged finance group identity and notes the public Wi-Fi location. Step 2. It checks the device state and realizes they are using a personal iPad, not their managed corporate laptop. Step 3. Enforcement begins. Because they are off the corporate network, CA challenges them with MFA, which they pass. Step 4. Because the device is unmanaged and the data is highly sensitive, CA doesn't grant full access. It routes the connection through Defender for Cloud Apps. The result, the executive reads the report in their browser, successfully doing their job. However, when they click Download, the session control blocks the action, ensuring confidential financial data is never saved to a public iPad. Maximum productivity, maximum security. This final flowchart maps out the executive's journey. Starting at the top, the finance exec attempts access from public Wi-Fi. The first major decision gate asks, is the device managed? If they had their corporate laptop, the yes path leads to an MFA prompt, followed by full access granted. But because they are on an iPad, the no path is taken. They are still required to pass MFA to prove their identity, but then we apply session controls. This culminates in the final secure state, read-only web access where all downloads are strictly blocked. This is the true power of Microsoft 365 Zero Trust architecture.
To find related ebook and other material for this training course, go to quicktechie.com. Now you will see all the video courses are available here. So let's move to the ebooks. You can go here, ebooks, all AI related ebooks like you are watching currently Mythos related training. That ebook would be uploaded under this section. You can download this ebook. PDF would be available, all 300-page PDF. So you just click on the download this entire ebook. You can download from this section. So whatever training you are currently listening, corresponding ebook would be available. We have thousands of ebooks available. Now, other than that, we have on video courses which you are watching right now. This also all AI related courses are available. Similarly, for all company related trainings are available like Microsoft. You can find it here with their respective certification training modules. All exam simulators which would help you to get the certification preparation. Just refresh if you get this kind of error. Okay, so now you can see these are all certification preparation materials. Will also be click here to the NVIDIA certification preparation material. So you can see all NVIDIA certification preparation materials, and click on any of this and it would load the entire screen and you can launch the practice paper. So this is what you can see, that you can submit the answer. We have an audiobooks available. Okay, so for each section, and these are our alumni who can you can find out all alumni who are accessing our portal.